Welcome to Art with Ian. Today we are talking about developing our creativity as artists. And we're going to be using a game I've been playing since I was a little kid called Squiggle to do this. So someone made a Squiggle for me from a Discord server. And you can see here I'm just kind of flipping it around right now, looking for a way to see a shape so that I can draw off of. Basically the way Squiggle works is someone draws any kind of line, as long as the lines don't touch or cross, and then you look at that and you try to see how you can develop that into an image of some kind. Usually it's less involved than the version I'm doing here, but I really wanted to push it and do something kind of really cool with it. So what I ended up kind of seeing was a bit of like a, in the Squiggle, I kind of saw a bit of like a, almost like a crown, like a cowl headpiece that I could kind of work with. So that was what I started trying to develop. And as you can see, as usual, if you follow my channel, you'll know already when I sketch, I absolutely do not care about line quality. Line quality is completely pointless when you're searching for a design. Don't get caught up in it. Cleaning your work up is part 2 of a process. Part 1 is finding something worth cleaning up. So don't waste any time on line quality when you're searching for a design. Just draw however you like to search, however you like to sketch. Just do that and do not worry about what it looks like. So I was thinking it would be cool to do some kind of like queen or something that felt like that kind of that natural crown like design that I saw in the original Squiggle. If I could work that into the design, and so just early days here, just sketching away, and I'm using the hard round pressure brush, so it goes thick to thin. And gives me really solid opaque lines. It's a really unforgiving brush, but over the years I've discovered that just getting solid opaque lines down can be, it's kind of nice. It's almost like using a pen, where yes, it's unforgiving, but it's nice that if you can get used to using it, it's nice that you're always getting really opaque lines down for just solid, clean and clear work. You can see almost in a kind of a bit of a sculpty type of way, the way I work, where I'm almost just scrubbing in the forms and erasing back, and it's kind of like molding clay, working things around. You could actually do this just with paint as well. You don't have to do it as a sketch. You can mold paint around as well. So I'm liking my design now. You can see here, so I've created a new layer, turned the opacity down, and now with the same brush I'm just kind of coming through and putting a bit of a cleaner line pass down. And my plan is to paint my line work out. So this is just I'm just trying to create a nice clear roadmap for my paint, and not have the line work be distracting or in the way. So it's 2 jobs are basically, job number 1, indicate to me exactly what I was thinking when I sketched, and job 2, stay out of my way when I'm painting, so yeah. Bear in mind that if line work isn't going to be your finished product, you don't have to labor over it too much. But if you're not careful, if you're too scrubby, and when you go to paint, you can find yourself confused. Like, what exactly was it that I wanted to do here? Is it that line or this other line? So I've found that mostly cleaned up, clean enough is a good way to go. Again, though, laboring over line work, unless you're going for a very specific style where line work is a part of it, I highly recommend you don't get too caught up in it. In this phase, I try to make sure that my original sketch is not, doesn't control me. It just helps guide me. I'm continuing to make decisions. I'm continuing to develop the ideas. I want it to be better when I'm done with this phase than it was when I was done with the first phase. So it's all about taking what was good about your original idea and ditching what isn't working or what you think might not be working. And I continue in this way, in that whole mindset that never goes away for the whole painting. I never stop seeing, or I never stop looking for ways to improve the design. It's never too late to make your painting better. Even if you are 10 hours into rendering it, you should never just assume it's too late now, I'm gonna just stick with what I've got. That should never be your mentality. Never. Okay, just trying to get that line. That's a difficult line right there through there. Like slightly curving, long line. Not an easy one. And because I've focused most of my energy in the last probably 10 years on rendering and painterly skills, and line work has always been just something I do to get me to that stage, not something I do for most of the time. My finished work isn't line work. I wouldn't exactly call myself the greatest line art guy, because it's not really what I do. So those kinds of lines for me are like, they're challenging for sure to get those long sweeping lines. And it's not challenging just to do one, but to follow one you've already done, that's another thing. So it looks here like now I've pretty much got what I like. So I'm using the wand selection tool, and I've selected the outside and then inverted that selection. And now I can create a layer under my line art and fill this whole thing in a color. That's a really quick way to get like your mask down, right? So as long as your line art is fully connected, you can see here I'm about to go up where one line wasn't connected, and I have to fill that in manually right there. But as long as all your line art is all connected, you can make a full selection of it, the outside of it, invert that selection. Then when you create a new layer underneath the line art, you can just fill it in and you've got yourself a mask. You don't have to sit and paint that all in by hand. Now it comes down to what color palette is going to best sell my design. And I want this queen to look kind of aquatic ice kind of region. That's kind of the feel that I get from the overall shape language. So that's what I'm going for. Starting off with a nice indigo blue purple for her cape, collar piece. Now I'm using a clipping mask. These are all clipped to the original, and I'm just kind of starting to vary up the color of her skin because it's more interesting than just putting down a blue. So go light in around the eyes, something I always like doing. Getting that, because then you have that heavy contrast of the eyelashes and the eyebrows against a lighter flesh. Just working in some markings, some ideas, and some of these ideas will get painted out. They're just my initial ideas. I'm just kind of trying to, I'm just searching. Now instead of searching with my lines for a design on the outside, a silhouette, now I'm searching for how the designs can work within the flesh, within the actual creature itself. I believe, yeah. So I decided she might look really powerful if her eyes were just glowing white instead of putting pupils in. And making that decision does kind of push the design in a specific direction of making her feel kind of ominous, but it was to me it was worth it because it just looks really really powerful, and you get that really hard, bright contrasting point right there at the eye, which I just like. So still in there just looking for ways to break things up. And when you're thinking of design, or when you're working with design, always try and think of a 1, 2, 3 read. In fact, just in general art, it's really good for your art to think about like a 1, 2, 3, like 1, 2, 3 major values in a read. Small, medium, large design elements, right? And if you look at my design, you can see where I tighten up and make smaller designs, and then where I get kind of medium, and then where there are large spaces. And the combination of those three elements creates an interest for the eye. It's not just, over here I see these finite little details, and then I go over here and I see more finite details, and then I look over there and go, guess what? More finite details. Nothing will take away the power of your detail like more detail. So you have to start thinking about varying those areas of interest, and giving your viewer a chance to re-experience the piece. Like over here it feels like this, and then it feels like this over here. So now I've got in here and I'm starting a shadow pass. I merged down all my original local color layers, and now I've clipped another layer to the top of those. I picked a direction of light in my head, and now I've got a layer set to multiply, and you can see in the color up on the right what color I'm using for a shadow. Pretty grayed down, and kind of like an aqua blue. As I worked on this piece, I did in fact decide to bring the saturation of my shadows up a little bit, because it just felt like I kind of wanted to. I've been exploring a little bit more graphic color palettes lately. I go through these phases where I gray things down and I get maybe a little more cinematic, and then I kind of want to splash hard colors around for a little while. So I'm kind of in that phase right now. My last painting was similarly high, chroma, but you can see here I'm making decisions about where the shadows need to go and how I want the forms to read based on the light source I've chosen. That's a whole that whole topic of understanding light and local light versus sunlight and all those kinds of things is that's a whole different thing. I do have some videos that cover light if you want to explore my my channel. I don't think I have one that actually specifically talks about it. In fact, that's going to be coming soon. I'm going to have one of my videos coming out probably in the next month is going to be on the difference between local light and sunlight. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. Ring the bell, because understanding how light works with form is a massive part of artwork. At least if you want to move beyond a cartoon, kind of just line art and flat color. If you want to get into really making your forms read and deciding what level of realism you want for your work, instead of just having what you're capable of dictate the level of realism you can accomplish, then you need to start really focusing on how you understand light and how light works, basically. So I've created another layer, and now this one is set to overlay, and you can see I haven't really changed the color too terribly much. I warmed it up a tiny bit, but it's in the same gray, kind of gray-white, little bit of chroma region, and with it set to overlay, it just Instead of making things darker, it makes things lighter. So again, I'm just continuing to determine what what plane changes are on this character, on this creature's head, basically. If there's a plane change, I need to tell the viewer there's a plane change, and the only way to do that is with value shift. So where something might turn away from the light, we go into shadow, and where something turns and gets more perpendicular to the light, we come harder into light, and then something perfectly perpendicular to the light is going to be those really bright spots. So like, for example, you can see the cheekbones below the eyes are catching light, and then the eyelid right above the cheekbone that's turned down because the eye is round, and so the eye pushes that eyelid downward, that's going to stay in shadow. Additionally, the nose, on the top of the nose, you get that bright spot where it's turning towards the light, and then underneath the nose, that quick turn down, you go into shadow. And all of those plane changes, getting those plane changes to read, is how we start to develop 3D form on a 2D plane. So right now I'm into a second pass on my shadow, which is just going in there with a slightly darker shadow and pushing things a little bit harder. And I'm not actually going to take this to a finish on this video, but at the very end I will show the final version of it. I spent maybe a couple more hours. For the video part, I spent about an hour and a half working on it, from the sketch into what you'll see when I stop. And then because no one wants, it's like watching grass grow, to watch someone detail a painting, and so I figured the interesting part, I basically recorded up to where it's like, okay, now it's just time to sit there and literally needle detail for a long time. So after the main recording stops, I spent another 2-3 hours just really focusing in, adding detail, trying to really bring more life into it. So we'll be getting there somewhat soon, I would think. So now I've gone in and I'm doing I'm trying to tell myself where I want those brightest lights to be hitting. Just like it's not something that you really keep, like the look. It's just telling myself, oh, that's getting hit by light, oh, that's getting hit by light, and then how I actually decide to go forward from there is up to me, but I've given myself that kind of information. So I turned the opacity of my line art down, you can see here, which has made everything look a lot less contrasted and kind of less alive, really. But in order to paint it out, you kind of have to wean yourself off of the line art holding everything down for you. And so you turn that opacity down and you start to see, oh, this is how much work my line art is doing for my design, and there's this much work still to be done from a paint perspective to get my things working, properly, my tones, my values, and all that. So it's one of those, it sucks when you first turn it down and you go, oh, it looks bad, But if you're going to paint your line art out, it's an essential part of the process to get that line art, to stop depending on that line art to tie the design down for you. Something I like to do once so using multiply and overlay to establish my shadow and my basic shadow and light. Once my color palette is what I'm doing right now, you can see I've made a group. I've merged everything, made a group. I copied the group and then merged it all down. And so now my multiply, my overlay, all that stuff is all on one layer. And I can go ahead now, and I've adjusted my exposure a bit. And I like to keep layers merged down as much as I possibly can. Just making that group and duplicating it gives you the chance to go back if you really want that safety net kind of a feeling. And now I'm in there with a multiply layer over the top, just deepening kind of telling myself what kind of level of contrast, you know, how dark are the darks, how bright are the brights, just before I go into a fully merge it down and start painting all on one layer kind of a feeling, you know, because now the line art is merged into the mask. So at this point, I can't just turn my line art off. I have to paint it out. I literally go in and paint it out. And that's something I used to turn my line art off eventually and just bring the painting up. But lately I've been just painting my line art out. Just working on the background a little bit here. Trying to make the color palette feel the way I want it to feel. Which is basically using warm and cool versions of blue, purple, and green. Instead of anything major like a big jump from like blue to orange, which is, you know, a great look, like, you know, purple against red, or I mean purple against green, excuse me, is a nice, it's a little bit less hardcore, but it's feels really, really good. You know, everything feels kind of moody, you know, instead of, it feels like it could be in a cavern or something like that, because you take that kind of daylight feel out of it a bit. So yeah, just showing a little bit of an example of what painting the line art looks like just there along the cowl. And that was it. And so then this is the, you know, a couple hours later, 3 hours or so later, this is what I came up with. So, you know, just going in and just paying a lot of attention to it and detailing everything out. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for notifications of future videos. Give this one a like. Hit me up in the comments, let me know if you enjoy the idea of Squiggle to develop your creativity. And I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share it with your friends. Ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.